To me, Kevin, how do you explain the fact? Okay? Let me ask you a blunt question. What's the racial policy of Israel? They seem to be having a very homogeneous society. They're pretty much strict in their legislation, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, and I've read pretty much extensively about all this. You can tell us, expert. What is their immigration policy in Israel?
Well, the immigration policy in Israel is essentially right of return. That Jews anywhere have the right to go to Israel and become citizens. That's not the case, say, with Palestinians. I mean, there's a large Palestinian diaspora, people whose parents or themselves were expelled from Israel back in 1948, who cannot go back to Israel. So it is it's a racial, ethnically based immigration policy, and it's overseen by the Orthodox. And the Orthodox require that people who come in there prove that they are Jewish according to Jewish law, which means you have to have a Jewish mother, which means that people who want to get married in Israel have got to produce a valid Jewish, a valid birth certificate showing that they're Jewish. So some Israelis that come back to the United States trying to trace down their family roots to prove to people that they are Jewish. In other words, it is a very ethnically conscious immigration policy. And part of my basic intuition and problem with Jewish activities in the United States has been that in the United States that Jews have erected this ideology that America has no ethnic basis, that we are just a nation that subscribes to certain ideals like freedom and democracy. We have no ethnic base.
Like a proposition nation.
Pardon? Yes, a proposition nation. Yeah. Exactly. Proposition nation. We're dedicated to certain propositions, but we have no ethnic base at all. And of course, that's what once the society gives up that ethnic base, and our immigration laws until 1965 were biased in favor of Europeans, and we were fairly consciously keeping out Asians, keeping out Africans, keeping out other peoples from coming here. Well, we gave that up, and Jewish activists and intellectuals were brutally critical of the idea that the United States would have any ethnic basis. But of course, in Israel, it's a far different story. So I think that the hypocrisy of that is one of the things that sort of got me into Jewish issues. And I know I'm viewed as a critic of Jews or as an anti-Semite even. But that's the kind of thing that bothers me, because I see ethnic interests as entirely legitimate. I think most countries of the world want to retain the people and the culture that made them. And no one would ask Korea to become un-Korean. That Korea should allow the immigration of 20 million Africans or something like that, who won't necessarily even speak Korean and certainly won't look like them and won't vote like them and won't have the same interests. It's crazy, but that's what's happened in this country. And so I see the sort of world we have lost. We have lost a homogeneous white country. We have lost our culture, the cultural predominance, and we are rapidly losing our ability to keep ourselves in political power. We are losing our demographic predominance in this country.
We'll certainly talk in the next segment, Kevin, if you don't mind, about the phenomenology of anti-Semitism more from an academic perspective. But I would like you just to say a few more words if you're familiar. I happen to be to some extent familiar with the legislation in Israel, which explicitly says that those who are to become citizens must be of Jewish descent. Are you a little bit more familiar with their legislation, and can you explain that a little bit?
Well, as I say, my understanding is that people the immigration laws of Israel are set up so that you have to have a Jewish mother, because that is what makes you Jewish according to Jewish law. And the Orthodox have a privileged place within Israel. They regulate marriage and they regulate what the status of immigration. So people, like if you wanted to immigrate to Israel, you would have to prove that you are biologically descended from a Jewish woman. And if you couldn't do that, you couldn't get married, and you couldn't immigrate to Israel. So it's racially, ethnically based. And what has certainly galled at the Palestinians over the years is that, despite the fact that they used to live there and they were expelled, they cannot come back in there to Israel. They cannot become citizens. So it is very definitely it's a racialist policy. And, these laws, it's quite common to hear Israel being called an apartheid state now, meaning that there are separate enclaves, separate laws, separate residential areas that are legally enshrined. If you go to the West Bank, there are separate roads for Jews and Palestinians and so on. So, in other words, Israel is becoming an apartheid society. It has become an apartheid society. It's ethnically based, religiously based. Apartheid society, something that they would crusade against, throughout the diaspora. They have, in all diaspora countries that the Jews have been in the last 200 years, in Europe and United States and other Western countries, they have always been anti-nationalistic. That is, they have opposed the interests of nationalist, majorities. To form nationalist governments, to have their own immigration laws that favor their group. But within Israel, they don't do that. So there's a big disconnect in Jewish life, I think, between the diaspora and within Israel. But the only commonality is that it suits Jewish interests wherever they are. And the same Jews that are on the left in the United States that are most pro-immigration, that are most opposed to the idea of a Christian nation or a white nation, these are the same people. They support the Israeli government. They support, and they might criticize some of the things that go on in Israel, but they certainly do not withhold their support. So I think it's a major double standard, major form of hypocrisy. It cannot be repeated too often. That is, the fundamental glaring hypocrisy in Jewish life.